Dr. Night Echoes.
When I was 16, I went to a friend's 16th birthday party in an apartment in the Bronx. All her family was there, including her sister who had a 6-year-old son. There weren't any animals or anything like that in the apartment, just people living there. After going to bed that night, I woke up in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom. I didn't bother closing the door all the way because everyone was asleep, and I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. I just planned to finish quickly and go back to bed. While I was on the toilet, reaching for the toilet paper, I looked toward the bathroom entrance. The door creaked open slowly, and there, standing in the doorway, was a little boy.
Behind him, I saw what looked like the shadow of a German shepherd. I couldn't see either of them clearly because the light was dim, but I knew what I saw. They both quickly ran off to the right of the bathroom while I sat there frozen in place. When I finally pulled myself together, I wiped it, ran out of the bathroom, and darted toward the bedrooms, which were to the left. The next morning, I told my friend what I'd seen. I honestly thought her nephew had just been running around during the night. But then at breakfast, they told me something that made my stomach drop. The former tenant of that apartment had a young son and a German shepherd.
Both had been killed there in a murder-suicide committed by the mother. When I was a kid, I lived with my parents and grandparents in a farmhouse somewhere deep in the country. Attached to the garage was a cellar that always gave me really eerie vibes. We used it to store old belongings and seasonal items. The door and the building itself were old and unsettling. Everything about that place felt off. I remember one day I was playing outside and my family asked me to grab something from inside the cellar for the yard. I went to find it, but it was buried so deep in the clutter that I had to climb over piles of stuff to reach it.
As I was crawling through, I heard a sound coming from my right, the darkest part of the cellar, where you had to walk in to pull the string light. It was a raspy whisper, calling my name, telling me to come closer. My whole body froze. I turned toward the sound and felt every hair on my neck stand up. In the darkness, I saw something like a shadow, but it didn't match anything that should have been there. It looked like it was watching me. I dropped everything and ran out, leaving the item behind. I never went back into that cellar again. Years later, I was sitting at my grandma's new house having dinner when my mom mentioned something that made my stomach twist.
She told me that a mother and 2 children had died in that farmhouse, and that their spirits were said to linger there. That's when it hit me. The 2 imaginary friends I had as a kid weren't imaginary at all. They were the dead children. I don't usually tell these stories because I know how crazy they sound, but I swear on everything, if you'd lived it yourself, you'd believe me. We grabbed our drinks and got back in the car, and I was driving this time. About 25 minutes into the drive back, we started losing our minds because the low fuel light came on and we had 0 cell phone reception. I was freaking out, wondering how to tell my mom and brother we were stranded. Of course, we were driving the gas-guzzling 4Runner. We finally made it past the Ozark Forest Road, and the surroundings started to look familiar again. We drove around a curve, and what I saw, I truly can't make sense of. It drives me crazy to this day. I could have lived with the idea that my mind was playing tricks on me, except my fiancé saw it too. As we were driving around the curve, we both saw an old woman's body with her head resting against a tree and her hand in front of it. She was dressed completely in white. Her face was pale, almost blending into the white of her clothes. Her body looked like it had morphed with the tree, as if she were camouflaged against it. After I saw her, I knew I hadn't imagined it. I asked my fiancé if he saw it too. He said yes, so I made him describe what he saw. He said he saw a lady in the forest leaning against the tree, exactly what I had seen. I decided to turn the car around and drive back toward the curve, but of course we didn't see her again. We even drove around twice more,
hoping to catch another glimpse. Then the low fuel indicator dinged again, reminding me we were nearly out of gas. I booked it to the nearest gas station, thanking God we finally made it to the Walmart station. When we got back to the Airbnb, I didn't feel like drinking anymore. I just wanted to go home. I never thought I'd post this story here, but I can't find anything online, in maps or anywhere else that could explain what we saw. I'm still wondering, was it a ghost, a witch, or something else? Has anyone had similar experiences in Arkansas?
When I was a kid, I used to hear the light switches in my parents' house clicking on and off at night. Always around the same time after midnight. You'd hear the faint click, then a pause, then another click, 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 like someone was impatient, but the lights never actually turned on. I thought it was my dad at first. He worked late sometimes, but whenever I checked, the hallway was empty. My parents' door would be closed. My little brother asleep. Just the quiet sound of electricity humming through the walls. It wasn't only me who noticed. My mom mentioned hearing keys jangling downstairs some nights, and once we both heard footsteps on the landing, heavy ones, like someone pacing slowly back and forth. When we looked, there was no one there. She told me to stop asking questions after that. Years later, when I was a teenager, I had a girlfriend who stayed over one weekend. We were lying in my room, just talking, when the switch sound started again. 3 quick clicks from the hallway. She asked what it was, and I told her not to worry. But before I could even laugh it off, a pale glow filled the corner of the room. It looked like fog at first. Then it shaped itself into a small figure standing near the end of the bed. A girl, thin, with long hair and a white nightgown that didn't quite touch the floor. She didn't move. She just looked at us.
The whole thing lasted maybe 10 seconds, but I remember how cold it got, like someone opened a freezer door right next to my face. My girlfriend was shaking. When I reached for the lamp, the figure was gone. The bulb flickered, but didn't turn on. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning she left early and never came back. Years later, my dad mentioned something I'd never heard before. He said the house had once belonged to a family whose daughter died of tuberculosis. My room, he said, used to be hers. She was around 9. That's the same age I was when I first heard the switches start clicking. When I was little, I used to have these strange dreams where I'd float above my body. My mom said it was just sleep paralysis, but it didn't feel like that. I wasn't trapped. I could move, drift, go wherever I wanted. One night, I ended up in a cemetery. I remember the cold before anything else, not on my skin, but somewhere deeper, like my bones were remembering what cold felt like. The place was quiet, but not empty. There were people everywhere, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. Every single person buried there was standing beside their grave. Some were still, some wandered slowly like they were lost. They weren't solid. Their shapes flickered like light through smoke, but they were all there, every one of them. I just stood there, watching. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt too still, too heavy. Then I saw him, a man, maybe in his 40s, dressed in clothes that didn't look right for our time. His face was pale, but not in a ghostly way. More like something drained all the color out of him long ago. He looked straight at me. He shouldn't have been able to. None of them ever had before. He started walking toward me, slowly, carefully, like he didn't want to scare me. When he spoke, his voice didn't sound like it came from his mouth. It just filled the air around us. He said something like, "Why am I still here?
How can you see us?" I wanted to answer, but before I could, something yanked me backward. My vision folded in on itself, and suddenly I was back in my bed, gasping like I'd been underwater too long. I never went back there again, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see him, standing in that graveyard, looking straight at me, waiting for an answer I never gave. My mom, brother, and I were staying at my grandmother's house. I woke up in the middle of the night on the floor and heard the door slam. We were all staying in the same room, so everyone woke up. We'd had strange experiences in that house before, so we immediately thought it might be something supernatural. I got up, checked, and then went back to bed. My mom was annoyed, so before going back to sleep, she placed a heavy suitcase in front of the door. Later that night, my brother, who was sleeping on the floor, was startled when the suitcase was knocked over and the door slammed again. We all woke up. This time, my mom was furious. She got up and started speed walking out of the room to yell at whatever was causing it. I followed her. When we reached the living room, we both saw it. A thick, pitch-black mist crawling across the ceiling. I froze. My mom's anger melted into pure fear. She calmly said, "Please stop. We'll be leaving in a couple of days." Then we both went back to our room and pushed all 3 of our suitcases up against the door. I couldn't sleep. My mom and grandma had told me they'd seen this black mass before, but I never had until that night. The living room was already dark, but this thing was darker than the dark. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Eventually, we all slept on the same bed. I turned over to face my mom, trying to calm down, but when I looked up, the black mist was swirling above us on the ceiling. I didn't say a word. I just pulled the blanket over my head and stayed still until morning. A couple of months later, my grandparents were watching TV when they saw the same black mass again, this time in the form of a man standing in the corner. My grandma asked my grandpa, "Do you see that?" And he quietly replied, "Yup. I don't tell this story often because people think we're crazy. But my dad, who used to be a skeptic, believes now. He was alone in that house one day and heard footsteps walking around. He called out, but no one answered. No one was there. He believes now." I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know why. The room was dark. The kind of dark where you can't tell if your eyes are open or closed. I turned over and pulled the blanket up to my chin. That's when I heard it. A dull bump at the bottom of my bed. It wasn't loud, but it was close. I froze, listening. The air felt heavier, somehow. Thicker, like something was in the room with me. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I pulled the duvet over my head, trying to make myself disappear. Then I felt it. Something wrapped around my ankle, firm, cold. It started to pull, not fast, just enough to make the mattress creak as my leg shifted downwards. I tried to scream, but my throat wouldn't work. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. My body was locked, like something inside me refused to respond. It kept tugging, slow and steady, until my heel slid against the sheet. The pressure stopped only when I managed to jerk my head slightly to the side. I blinked, and just like that, I could move again. The room was silent. My legs were still under the covers, perfectly still, like nothing had happened. I didn't think. I just ran. I burst into my sister's room and crawled into her bed without saying a word. She didn't even wake up. I lay there, staring at the wall, heart hammering, waiting for morning. Even now, I don't know what it was. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe not. But I do know this. An old man died in that house. My parents said he was alone for days before anyone found him. His room was mine. Sometimes, I still feel a tug on the blanket,
just enough to remind me he might still be there.
I was staying overnight in a mid-range hotel. Nothing fancy, but clean enough. The kind of place where the walls are thin, and you can hear people dragging suitcases down the hall at all hours. I had been driving all day, so by the time I crawled into bed, I was half asleep before the lights were even fully off. I sleep on my side. Always have. I'd just gotten comfortable when I felt the mattress dip behind me, like someone had quietly climbed into bed. The shift was slow, real. The air changed, too. Heavier, warmer. I froze. Then it pressed against me. Not hard, just close, like an arm was draped around my waist. The feeling was unmistakable. It wasn't the weight of a blanket or the way the sheets bunch up. It was the curve of another body fitting perfectly against mine. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. There was no sound, no footsteps, no door opening. Just that presence curled up behind me, breathing slow and steady. For some reason, I didn't feel threatened, at least not right away. The thought hit me out of nowhere. It was lonely. Whatever it was, it just wanted to be close to someone. The idea almost made me feel sorry for it. Then, the reality of it crashed in. I jerked upright, heart pounding, and shouted, "Get off me!" The air in the room changed instantly. The warmth disappeared. The mattress shifted again, rising slightly, like the weight had lifted. For half a second, I swear I felt something brush past my shoulder, light like static, before it was gone. I sat awake for hours after that, lights on, staring at the empty half of the bed. The sheets still looked pressed down, as if someone had been lying there. I've stayed in dozens of hotels since then. I still sleep on my side, but I've never felt truly alone in a room again.
When I was homeless, I stayed in all kinds of squats. Abandoned houses, old stores, buildings people forgot existed. But there was one place in the city that stood out. Everyone called it the Oogie Boogie Building. It used to be a department store years ago, but by the time I got there, it had been empty for at least a decade. People said weird things happened there. You'd hear screams before you even stepped inside. But when you looked, the place was empty. A few people I knew swore they saw things moving in the dark. Some even ran out crying. I thought they were exaggerating until I stayed there long enough to understand. One night, a group of younger squatters came by with drinks, laughing, trying to impress each other. I stayed in my corner, keeping to myself, sorting through my stuff. Then they started calling out to whatever haunted that place, taunting it, saying its name. That's when things went bad. The air got heavy. Objects started clattering across the floor. Footsteps thudded from the ceiling, but there wasn't a second story anymore. Everyone screamed and bolted for the exit, laughing like it was a joke, but I could tell they were scared for real. When the noise stopped, I realized I was alone. That's when I felt it. Something standing behind me. Huge. Close. I didn't have to turn around to know it was looking right at me. My whole body went cold. I just started crying. I said, "I'm sorry. I have nowhere else to go. I'm not trying to bother you. I'm just tired." The pressure in the air shifted. It didn't feel angry anymore, just sad. Then something crashed in another room, loud enough to make me jump. When I looked down again, there was a small, worn-out kangaroo teddy sitting on my blanket. I don't know where it came from. I held it all night and fell asleep without fear for the first time in weeks. After that, whenever people came and got scared, I'd laugh quietly to myself. It never bothered me again. A few months later, they tore the building down. I found housing soon after, but I still have that little kangaroo. Whatever was in that place, whatever Oogie Boogie was,
It showed me kindness when no one else did, and I'll never forget that.